So, a lot of questions about the media that I put out regarding specifically what board am I using for the Foildrive, and the answer is a little bit unusual. Now, it started as a project. I knew that the dynamics and the physics of Foildrive compared to winging, kite foil, prone foil is completely different. You're using a power source, for one, with a great big box bolted to the bottom of your board that's pushing power in from a completely different place in the system. And so it occurred to me that it would be far more elegant to do away with the box and to design the board specifically so it appealed to the power source and physics of what was actually going on, getting you up and to your feet. And for me, normal boards weren't doing it for me. I'd tried 65 litre boards that went no earlier than some 35 litre boards, and on top of that, you had the handling handicap of having an extra 5 centimetres bolted onto your mast, which was extra distance between your mast and the bottom of your foot, and the whole thing just didn't seem right. So that's where the problem and the project started. You'll see on this board here, the drive is completely inset into the board, so it's been completely swallowed. The board itself is small, probably around 20 to 25 litres. It's quite flat, it's fairly narrow, and it's almost devoid of all rocker, 2 foot from, well, probably a foot from the front of the board. And people talk to me about, oh, what volume board are you using on the Foildrive? Really, the defining feature of getting a Foildrive board going is its ability to transition from sludging and dragging through the water to skipping across the top of it like a skipping stone, and reducing the amount of power you need to cross that threshold is key. And volume has got nothing to do with it. It's rocker, it's surface area, and it's drag. So if you can maximize all 3 of those aspects, you get something that is tiny. These boards are coming out at between 2.7 and 3.2 kilos, depending on the finish quality. They're carbon, full reception. I've found a way to get a signal right the way through to the box, including when you're actually inside a wave, which for duck diving is hilarious. But if you imagine, I mean, this board specifically, the distance between the top of the box on the Foildrive unit and the bottom of your foot is 10 millimeters. So having your board at 55 millimeters, something like that, from the plate on the top of the masthead is a massive handling gain. You also lose the drag of the box, which is advantageous on startup. It's also advantageous because you can sit the board closer to the surface of the water without it dragging. You also get the motor closer to the board. Now, that sounds handy in that you're not having the pod so far away from you when you're carving and dipping in and out, pumping, trying to keep the thing high. But actually, it has a definitive secondary advantage. Now, having the source of power closer to the direction of movement, you know, that line on the board there, I mean, ideally you'd want to be pushed on the back of the board, but you can't. It's being pushed from there. Having it pushed from further up increases the amount of twist, and it pushes the nose of the board up, and that's where that on power front foot weight comes from. It's from the torsional twist of the drive pushing up the nose of the board. If you can drop that motor closer to the board itself, that front foot pressure diminishes. Not completely, but it definitely goes. And it turns it from annoying, having to shuffle further your stance further forward on the board under power, to the point at which you can just dip yourself forward with your stance and you can completely balance it out. And then when you pop and come onto glide and the pod releases, then you just move your stance back to normal again. So it stops you having to shift yourself around, which is why you see in these clips I've started using a foot strap, which is another story as well, but I'm not going to go into that here. The other thing about these boards that we've developed is that they're very small, 2.7 to 3.5 kilos, depending on the finishing quality. They're very, very small, very, very stiff. Like I said, we've made them carbon. We've figured out a way to still keep full reception. The low mass of them and the high stiffness translates so much information from the foil to you that when I've gone to heavier or more flexible inset boards, a lot of the fine information that you get from the foil about trimming when you're absolutely flat sticking it's very much an autonomic sort of cerebral thing. When you increase the mass and make them a bit more flexible, I just, for no other reason, the dimensions are all the same. The lower mass boards and the stiffer boards, I'm much more stable than I am on the heavier, more flexible boards. It's a hard thing to quantify, and the only thing I can think is that it's the fine information that your brain gets from the foil, those minute little movements that helps you get onto adjustments faster than you would do otherwise, and it stops those oscillations that get out of control and ultimately take you out. The other thing about these boards is that you can make them small. I still haven't found how small yet, but I have a couple of experiments to see how far I can go. Again, the key is getting them over the threshold and onto the skipping and planing section of their surface area. Clearly, I don't believe that volume has anything to do with it other than the ability to actually lie on the thing and paddle it home. Changing the battery is the other question that I get asked a lot on these things. How do you change a battery if it's inset in the board? Well, I decided the best way to do it is to actually bolt the foil to the mass box using 2 screws, and you can see the modification I've done on my foil here. Some mast heads actually allow you to do this anyway, or you can just drill through them and bolt them in. It's really quite a cool little thing, and it allows much easier setup as well in the back of the van. So having done this, you can simply take a power driver, which I keep with me in the battery. You just whip these 4 nuts off, put your foot on the board, pull it out. And from there, just tip the foil upside down, clips, battery, clips again, lower it in, 4 bolts, hand tightened, whack them on with the power driver and you're good to go. Now, granted, it's more faffy than the traditional system, but it works, and insetting the drive this way has so many benefits over the traditional outset mounting that small faff is a tiny price to pay. So this project started purely as a personal exploration really into this new technology. I completely fell over myself with these Foildrive sessions I was getting. It was absolutely insane. And so it never occurred to me that I would ever want to build any of these boards, but my friends saw them, they wanted to go, they persuaded me to make them one. So here we are, and these boards here, just finished them off these last couple of days. They're going out this weekend. I'm probably going to do one more production run before the end of summer. So if you're interested, drop me a line and I'll give you some details. And that's probably going to be it until we see some production boards next summer. But what a fantastic thing this Foildrive is, and for all the prone foilers out there who are doing their nut about it, it's enabled people like me to get a very decent standard in well, it's assisted foiling, but when you turn the motor off, it's unassisted foiling, and that's the key. It just gives you access to time on the wave that you would never normally have, and it is fantastic. So there you go. If you're interested in Foildrive or assist foils, definitely go and get one if you can justify it. And for those of you that have them, have a serious think about inset boards. And if you don't fancy one of these, think about modifying your own board. Like anything, you can learn how to do it. A bit of trial and error maybe, but it's totally doable.